Okay, what is going on, ladies and gents? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the number one student podcast in the world, the Student Podcast. I'm not exactly sure if I can still call it the number one student podcast in the world because we haven't done many episodes in the past year. I've probably done 5 or 6 episodes in the past year, but this is the first episode of 2021. This is episode number 20, and today we've got a special guest with Alvin Zhu. Alvin Zhu is a master's architect student studying in Sydney, Australia. He runs the page Projects by People that aims to connect the faces behind the projects. He's also the co-founder of the MadCollective. However, he's always had the dream to become a filmmaker. Welcome, Alvin. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much. It's great to be on.
What have you been up to? Come on, give us a lowdown on what you've been up to. How's the studying? How's the YouTube coming along? Come on, give us an update.
Oh, okay. Well, today I moved into this new place. Like I literally just moved in this morning and had to unpack, so I'm a bit tired. In terms of everything else that's going on, I've been pretty busy this last month. It's been pretty intense, but I enjoy it. So yeah.
I think there's beauty in busyness. I think the same as well. I just love being stressing out and being well busy. I'm liking the new little setup as well. I think you look like you got a nice little room going on there. Um, so
Cheers.
you study in Australia. So technically
Mhm.
it's something like 10:30. What time is it there for you now right now?
9:40 p.m.
9:40. So it's
Yeah.
10:40 in the morning here in the UK. So what is it like studying in Australia? Obviously you go to university in Australia. Which university did you go to?
So I go to the University of New South Wales for my master's, and for my bachelor's, I went to the University of Queensland, which is in Brisbane.
Nice.
Yeah, to elaborate on what it's like to study here. So I guess the only real comparison I can make is to my time in Italy. So I went on exchange for 6 months and got to see what it's like to study in Europe. I'm not sure if it's the same everywhere, but I would have to say that studying in Australia is a lot easier. It's a lot easier, less intense. From what I saw, people usually had classes every day of the week. And for us, it's usually like 2 or 3 days for uni. It's pretty chilled. We didn't have to write a thesis or anything like that. None of that jazz. It's just like the standard studio, couple theory topics and some technical stuff. That's about it. Yeah.
Nice. So you've moved around a bit. You've gone to Italy. You're now obviously studying in Australia. You're on your master. You did your BA in Australia, though, didn't you? But then you did a
Yeah.
year out in Italy.
Or 6 months. Yeah.
So in terms of the education itself, did you see much difference in the courses?
Um, I would say I don't know if it comes down to the people I met in Italy, but I think I learned a lot in that 6 months that I was there in comparison to what I learned at home. And it could come down to, yeah, like I said, the people or the way it was taught. I When I graduated with my bachelor's, I felt like I didn't know that much about architecture. Um, Although we do a 3 year course, and I know a lot of people do like 4 year courses for bachelors and stuff like that. So I really felt like I didn't know enough at the end of my bachelor's degree. Yeah.
Nice. So even though you're studying architecture now, you actually started your BA in an engineering course, didn't you?
hmm
What made you choose engineering? What made you switch to architecture? What was it about architecture that interested you to switch from engineering?
So I guess in high school, all my best friends were going into engineering. That's probably why I went into it. I did have an interest in it for sure. Like I liked making things. I guess that's why I wanted to go into mechanical engineering. But then when I actually did the course, it was way too technical for me. Like the maths,
I can imagine it's
the
bonkers.
calculations, I couldn't do it. Like I think it took me 3 weeks to realize not for me, so I dropped out. And the reason I went with architecture instead was because I guess it had that balance of creativity and technical knowledge, stuff like that. So yeah, I'm really glad I made that choice. Like it's probably one of the best decisions I've ever made.
So do you see yourself as being a quite a practical person then? Because I think that's one of the main things in going into architecture. I think a lot of people don't necessarily know what they want to do or why they want to study architecture, but a lot of the time the reasons why is because they're practical and they just want to be hands-on with things. Because I think obviously architecture is very hands-on. You go into sites, you're building things, you're drawing things. There's all kinds of things going on in architecture. I think that's the beauty behind it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, like, and I don't know, it's just that I didn't architecture wasn't exactly what I expected to be either. I thought it would be a bit more creative and a bit looser than what it was, but yeah, I think it was a really good balance in the end of practicality and creativity.
I think that's kind of similar to my kind of outlook going into architecture. Is that you go in expecting to be all of this. I mean, at university you are quite open and you can design whatever you want, and it's a lot of blue sky projects, and you are quite creative, and you can be. But I think within the actual industry itself, when you actually go into architecture as a profession, it's a lot different, and it kind of opens your eyes up to think this might not be the creative subject that I signed up for. However, you are doing other things to what alongside your architecture to be creative. And if you could give us a little insight onto the other projects you've got going on, you've got the MadCon, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later on. You are a co-founder of the MadCollective. What was the idea behind the MadCollective, and what is your kind of role?
Mm, okay, so my role in the MadCollective is pretty, I don't know, I'd say it's pretty insignificant in terms of what I actually do. But initially, I guess I did bring everyone together because I saw this opportunity to bring in um, a bunch of people that are like pages that I was familiar with, and I just thought, if we all have the ability to do so much individually, like imagine what we could do together. Um, and the reason I went with, that specific group was because I was just familiar with them at the time, and it was just, one of those things that ended up working out really well because I'd never met any of them. I don't even think I knew like what they looked like before
Yeah,
that, and it's just
welcome
I
to
I knew their
2020.
pages. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, like it just happened. I think it all happened as well during lockdown. So everyone was in lockdown. I was thinking of ways to do reaching out to people, trying to connect with more people online because it seemed like that was like the perfect time to be doing that. And yeah, I just saw these people were collaborating kind of. So I was like, why not reach out to them and see if they'd want to work together.
So your page, Projects by People, was obviously the kind of leg to the Mag Collective. And your page, Projects by People, I think it's interesting because essentially the idea behind it is connecting the people behind the project. What was the kind of idea behind that? Why did you feel like that was something you needed to do within the digital space? Because I personally think that's quite a strong idea, and I think it's something we need to continue to push because I know you might say this in a minute, but I think there is a bit of a disconnect between the project or the work and the person itself. A lot of the time you're seeing these amazing buildings going up, but you don't necessarily see the face behind that building. So in a smaller way, you're kind of introducing that within your Projects by People page.
Yeah. That's basically what I wanted to do because I guess the Projects by People community is mostly geared towards students at this point, or
Mhm.
graduates, students, graduates, recent people. And the idea behind that was to start to make that change in people's mindsets at this early stage. So get people familiar with each other at this stage before the buildings start coming up and all that
Yeah.
stuff. The reason I want to connect people like this is because when I did go on exchange, like I said before, it was one of the, like I learned so much purely through the people that I met from different backgrounds. And it's something that the internet offers us. And, people before us, like all the generations before us, never had anything like this. And it's such a great opportunity to meet people and learn collaboratively and all that. So yeah, that's basically the idea behind Projects by People.
And do you think that has become, well, essentially you've explored something that's become even more prominent now that we're in COVID world? I'm not sure what it's like in Australia. What is it like in Australia? Are you in lockdown? What's going on?
No, we're doing pretty well. We're doing pretty well. Like the
Typical.
rest of the world, yeah. I guess it's just because we're so isolated from everyone else. But yeah, things are good here. I wouldn't have been able to come to Sydney otherwise. I was a bit worried.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago, we went to lockdown out of nowhere, but everything cleared up. So yeah.
So
So what was the question?
are you still in studio and everything, seeing people and whatnot?
We will be, yeah. Every class
That's
starting, we
crazy.
start in 2 weeks. Everything's back
Mm.
to normal for us, I think. Yeah.
So that's mad because I think in the UK, everyone has completely lost track of what it's like to be near someone. It's funny. The other day, I was watching a YouTube video and I saw these people stood closely to each other. I was thinking, that looks odd. It looks weird. Why they stood? People are hugging and whatnot. And I'm thinking, God, I haven't done that in almost a year, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
Mhm.
So do you think COVID has pushed your page further? And do you think this kind of time where everything's gone digital has helped you expand your idea behind Projects by People?
Yeah, definitely. I think now more than ever, people are seeing it as, what it should be. And I think that's a really, really great thing. Um I yeah, that's yeah.
Have you thought of actually doing it industry people rather than just students as well and expanding? Obviously, that would be a big expanding. There's a lot of people to cover, but that also might be quite interesting because I think within industry as well, there's also a lack of kind of connectivity with the actual digital age as well. Because I think with students, they're very much involved with social media, but with more industry people, it might be interesting
Mhm.
to introduce them into social media and connect them with the students. So then you're kind of bridging that gap as well. So is that something you've thought about doing as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a really, really good idea because it really is going to help bring everyone together. It's not just this new generation, it's everyone, I guess, in the industry. And I guess the complications that come with that are that it's hard to convince them
Hmm.
to, spare the time to do, because I'm liking leaning towards, more video based interviews.
Hmm.
So, you can actually hear them speak and see their expressions and all that stuff. So getting them to give some of their time is a bit difficult. I've tried, still trying, but yeah, it's definitely something that I hope can be brought into projects by people.
So for anyone who hasn't seen the Projects by People page, essentially what it is Alvin kind of asks these people questions and they talk through their project, where they're kind of located, their background, and those kinds of things, which I personally think is really interesting because obviously we both have a bit of a passion in filmmaking, which we'll go into in a minute because I think filmmaking is essentially the route you want to go down. So you're kind of bridging that gap there between your filmmaking skills and being creative and architecture, and you're starting to introduce your kind of hobbies. And is that something you've done within your architecture projects where you've introduced things where you're things you kind of enjoy more? So for me, for example, I introduced film into my projects. Is that something you thought of doing, or something you've explored?
Um, I guess back in uni. So it's been a while since I actually did any architecture projects, but back in my last year of my bachelor's, what I did was I just volunteered to help out with the end of year exhibition, and then I ended up, one thing led to another, and I ended up making a video documenting kind of that studio. That was kind of the starting point for the whole video thing for me, in terms of combining it with architecture. And other than that, in actual architecture projects, I guess I always loved storyboarding, like making a story around the project. And you know, if it was, for example, about a family who owned a bike shop, like I would tell this whole elaborate story about the people in this bike shop and how their lives would work every day. I think storytelling was one of those things in architecture that always really appealed to me.
I think in a lot of ways, I think the storytelling and the narrative side of architecture is the most important thing. And I think where you said there is how you're doing these kind of collages or maybe animations of these people using the spaces. Essentially, that is what architecture is. It's the people using the spaces. It's the expressions and the activities. And I think that's what it's all about. And I think that's where it could actually really be interesting where you kind of join the two between filmmaking and architecture, because the qualities between the two is all about storytelling, which I think is the most important driver within architecture in telling the story of your project, essentially. So I think that could be something quite interesting where you actually make your work a film. And that could be,
Yeah, for sure.
so you could actually you could do animations of the spaces evolving and the construction or whatever, or people using the spaces, because that's something I'd personally like to do.
Yeah, definitely. Like, the stories behind architecture are just, they're not, they're nowhere near the mainstream. Like the only architecture in the mainstream you see is like, I don't know, houses, like celebrity houses and stuff like that. But there's so many stories behind it that, I think are fascinating. I don't know if everyone would, but that's where I'm at.
I think also a lot of people are missing those bits within their designs or within their projects. It's just that connection with people, which I think needs to be pushed a lot more in the storytelling side of things. And you mentioned storyboarding there, and I bang on about storyboards all the time in my videos, and people are always thinking, why is he talking about storyboards again? But it's like it works. It tells the story of
Yeah.
your project. It tells the activities and the people using the space. And I think that's what people are forgetting a lot, is that the spaces are designed for people and people are using that spaces. So the story needs to be told.
100%. 100%. Couldn't agree more with that. Yeah.
So with the MadCollective,
Mm.
which is obviously branching off your Projects by People page, you
Mhm.
started the MadCon, which is the first virtual architecture convention. What was the idea behind that? I know you might not have had as big of a role in that. I know Sana's driving a lot of that. But let's talk a little bit about MadCon and give the listeners an
Mm.
idea as what it's about.
Sure. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like you said, Sana really, she's smashed it.
Yeah, she nailed it.
She's done an unbelievable job with that. And when she first brought it up, it was something that really got me excited, because the idea initially was just to bring as many of these content creators together as possible. It's basically the MadCollective idea, but way, way, way bigger. And you know, it's just something that I couldn't be more excited about, because bringing all these different perspectives, these different skill sets all into one, like, set of events is just something that, and for free as well.
Hmm.
It's just so good for the community, I think, because it not only helps people learn more, but it also brings people together. You get to see more faces, new faces, and then like helping these creators grow as well is a really important thing, because a lot of them, most of them, all of them are doing really, really good stuff. And the more exposure they get, the more work they'll put out. And, the cycle just continue, like more and more people just learn more. Yeah.
I think it'll be even bigger than the MadCon. I think the idea behind it is actually something that large organizations can kind of
Yeah.
take control of, because the idea of having a virtual convention, it's like when she mentioned it to me, I was thinking, this is actually an unreal idea if she pulls it off. It could, because it's essentially what everyone's wanted. It's like going to God, what's it called? What's the gaming conventions?
Is that like Comic-Con and stuff?
Yeah, Comic. It's like
Yeah, I
going
couldn't
to
think of it.
it's
Yeah.
like going to Comic-Con, but online with architects. So
Mhm.
I think it's really interesting. Me and Alvin are actually running a couple of events, which would be exciting. One of them is it's mainly discussing kind of student life and beyond, kind of showcasing the more lifestyle side of things behind our work. And then the other one's actually a day in the life premiere, which I think is really interesting. And once again, it's introducing our hobbies with filmmaking. Do you want to give us a bit of information on the day in the life and the idea behind it?
Yeah. So, I mean, that was basically your idea. I do remember that. But I guess the idea, my understanding of what it is all about is basically getting people to. It's a way of us showing our lives and how we do things, but also a way of encouraging people to talk more about the issues that they have and just open up about how they go about their lives, and not to close off that door to the rest of the world. It's about opening up, talking about the things that might be more difficult to talk about, and yeah, it's just, I think it's not based on your ability to make a video or anything like that. It has nothing to do with that. It's more about how you want to tell your own story and how you can share that with everyone. Yeah, that's my understanding anyway.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I was going to say exactly the same thing. I think the idea behind it is essentially, yeah, telling your own story. You film your own day in the life, and you could essentially edit it. You could tell the story the way you want to be able to say it. You could edit it to different levels. It could be really kind of simple and basic if that's the way you wanted to tell your story. You could use your own music and those kinds of things. And I think the important thing is to talk to people essentially and spread your experience, because I think obviously being with lockdown and not being able to be with people or being around people, there is that disconnect between, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right way of doing this? Am I feeling like I'm the only person who's struggling? Surely there's other people out there feeling the same way. And I think the idea is to kind of just bring people together a little bit, reassure people, share their experiences. Obviously, people are going to have different levels of cameras, different spaces. Some people might be working in their bedrooms. Some people might have an amazing studio. And I think it's just about bringing all those experiences together, because I think as architects and designers, I think you are shaped by the experiences and the people around you. And essentially, we can't necessarily do that at the moment with COVID. So
Mm.
through a digital and a film format, we can still explore those things. And I guess that's the idea behind the day in the life premiere.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you've got a lot of things going on. How do you balance it
Mhm.
all?
Oh,
I think I ask everyone this question. I also I've seen you speak about the four burner theory.
mm. Yeah. Well, I guess my take from that uh, theory was that you can do a lot of different things as long as what was my so what was my conclusion? So okay, how I balance things is basically that I like to try a lot of different things, um, but I don't need to push myself to the I don't need to burn myself out. Um, I guess I can try things in moderation is what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying it very well, but yeah, basically do things in moderation. And yeah, you can't, from my experience, committing too much to certain things hasn't really benefited me. Sometimes I just burn myself out, and then I end up losing like 2 weeks or something after that because I'm just not in a good mood or can't be bothered doing anything else. Yeah.
I think I think the problem with it is that if you're doing too many things, you end up not being as good in one thing, and you end up just being good at.
Mm.
So you end up being good at a lot of things, but not a specialist in one thing, because you're doing all
Yep.
these different things. You're trying to do this, but at the end of the day, time is something that you can't change. And if you don't have enough time to do something, it's not going to be up to the level that you want it to be. I think
Mm.
that's kind of
Yeah.
something you talked about the burner theory as well, and balancing
Yeah.
things a little bit better. Because I think
Mm.
it's very easy, especially with architecture and all the opportunities of architecture. It's very easy to get involved in everything and being like, yeah, I'll do that, I'll do that, I'll do that. But I think sometimes it's important to not stay in your lane, but kind of keep on one path, but go off in little tangents, bringing in bits of information, bringing experiences, but not shutting yourself off from those kind of possibilities. And I guess that's what you're doing with the MadCollective, MadCon, Projects by People.
Yeah.
Do you think the MadCon is your opportunity to get into the filmmaking industry? Is that your opportunity to bring in your kind of filmmaking ideas into architecture and combine the two?
In terms of MadCon, I think the film that I wanted to make was kind of my attempt to, I guess, connect with as many architecture students as possible. Like I want to talk to them from my own perspective. Like that's purely what I wanted to do. And hopefully they like the style and all that, and start following what I do. But otherwise, I don't know. I don't exactly see it being a way into the film industry. There's another project that I'm working on at the moment, but hopefully is that way in. I don't know if we'll talk about that, but yeah.
Do you want to give us an insight, or is that something you've got to stay quiet?
I mean, I think I can talk about it because
exclusively on the student podcast.
Yeah, I haven't even talked about anyone else. But so basically, over the last year, pretty much starting in February last year, I started this project with an organization, and the whole idea behind the project was to, I think this was just as COVID was becoming a thing, and people, I think offices were closing and stuff like that. We saw an opportunity to do virtual office crawls. Oh no, I think they were reopening up. I'm getting things mixed up, but yeah, we saw an opportunity to do virtual office crawls to kind of give students the opportunity to see what it's like to work in a certain office, architecture office. And so what I did over the last year was go around to 8 different practices. I did some interviews. I filmed the offices and tried to capture the work culture, I guess, the office culture of these places. And basically, just give people an idea of what it's actually like to work in an architecture office, because there are so many practices, especially small ones, that people don't really know what it even looks like to work in one of those and what the relationships between people are like. This project is also hopefully helpful for the practices because it gets their name out a bit more, gives them a bit more exposure, and yeah, I think I'm really excited for that to be launched in I don't know, the end of this month, I think, end of February, but we'll see.
Exciting. That sounds really good. It's like your bar crawl, but you're hopping between your offices essentially.
Yeah.
Which I think it's a really cool idea. That.
Yeah, it's and I mean the focus of those videos as well is the people that work there. So what I did was I asked people what their favorite part about working in that office is, just so that people can get like a real idea on what people actually enjoy about being an architect in that office. And yeah, hopefully it just helps people get a better understanding of, all these different places, and hopefully it grows beyond those 8 practices. We'll see.
So is this going to be like a live kind of office crawl, or is it pre-recorded where it will just be up on your page and pre-recorded?
Yeah, basically it'll be it's pre-recorded, like edited. It's kind of commercial, like they're kind of commercial videos, which is why I'm saying it's leaning more towards like my professional portfolio of work now, like in filmmaking. So yeah, I don't know how it'll go. I'm a bit nervous, but hopefully it goes well.
No, it sounds really good. I think it's a good idea because, like you say, there's also this disconnect. Like we've talked about projects and people, there's also a disconnect between the people and the practices, and a lot of the time when you're thinking, oh, I'm going to apply for all these practices, and you get an offer or something, you're thinking, am I actually going to enjoy the space? What's it like? Obviously, at the moment with COVID, it's even more
Yeah.
interesting, which
Mm.
is because no one could go to the offices and no one knows what the office. I've been working for a practice since September. I haven't met one person yet, and I haven't been to the office once. So I don't know what anyone looks like.
Yeah.
All I know is the voice of people. So when I get to the practice
Mm.
I might end up going in June or something. I'm going to get there. I'm going to be listening to people's voices, thinking, ah, you're Greg or something like that, because I don't actually know what they look like. I'm just going to listen to their voice.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. I think COVID is, though it's been obviously an absolute tragedy, and it's been horrible for so many people. I think with the digital age and with a lot of people, it's actually opened up a lot of possibilities with creatives. And I think that's also another thing where you can showcase these internal spaces that people can't actually go to at the moment, and learn about the spaces. And it can also help people decide what practice they want to apply for in coming out of their degree, um, which I think that's a good idea. What's it going to be called?
Uh, I don't even think it has a real name. I think it's just gonna be called like a virtual office call or something. So not too catchy, not too catchy.
Nice, sounds good. So, Alvin, let's talk a little bit about filmmaking. We've touched on it a little bit, obviously,
Yeah,
throughout the podcast,
awesome.
talking about the different things and the different legs to
Mhm.
your architecture. You you want to be a filmmaker, essentially. That is your goal. That is your dream. Why is that? What is it about filmmaking that you love? How do you think you're going to end up getting there?
Damn, there's so many things in that question. Okay,
Just go
so
for it. Go for it.
I'm gonna ramble a bit here. But you know, I guess it does come down to storytelling at the end of the day. It's just something that always resonated with me as a kid. I think going all the way back to when my dad used to tell me stories at night. He'd make up all these weird stories every time before I go to bed, and you know, stuff like that. Um, and our family used to always record all of us as kids, and there's just that nostalgia that comes with watching those videos from being a kid. And yeah, I just fell in love with that idea of preserving these memories, like having these memories physically and being able to rewatch them over and over again if you want, and preserving moments in time, forever, basically, which is um, just this incredible thing that we have access to, everyone has access to now. And yeah, I don't know, it's just filmmaking to me is just everything I love about. I don't know, I'm just extremely passionate about it. I really couldn't see myself doing anything else at this point. I've just fallen so deep into it that yeah, there's no going back.
I think that's whenever you fall deep into filmmaking, it's difficult to wind yourself back. I think I found
Mhm.
myself doing that as well. And even though it's not, our kind of videos are very different. Yours are quite animated and it's actually telling a story, whereas mine's a little bit more like filming my day and talking through advice, etc. But I also think there is that nostalgia in that, the element of you're documenting your life, and you've got that there. So even for me, like sometimes I'm
Mhm.
thinking, I wonder what I did on my 18th birthday. And I'll scroll through my YouTube, 18th birthday. Oh, I did this, I did that, I spoke to this person, whatever. And it's all there. And it's a bit odd sometimes. And you think, because I went through a stage of literally filming probably every day for almost a year.
Mhm.
So I could
Mhm.
literally think, what did I do on that day? And it's there, and
Mhm.
it's all documented. And I think we, as people who live in this generation where there's cameras, there's editing softwares, why not make the most of that?
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I fell in love with editing as well. It's just something that people, I don't know, don't talk about that much when it comes to filmmaking. But editing is just such a powerful tool as well in storytelling. And I think if there was no editing, I wouldn't be making videos because I can't speak very well. And yeah, it's just the opportunity to really tell a story the way you want to tell it is what I think is incredible. Yeah.
I think that's my favorite thing about it as well. Every time I film a video or something, it's always I'm excited to go sit at home, get a coffee, get my headphones on, get all my presets ready, and then putting together the video that essentially you filmed. And sometimes I think the interesting thing is that if you film something that didn't go to plan, you can edit it and you can tell the story in a different way. Essentially, you are documenting things, but you can also then edit that footage to tell that story in the way you want to tell it as well, which I think sometimes when I deep it and sometimes when I think right into it, I think it's actually crazy that you're actually taking these moments in time and filming it, and then you can actually go and edit
Yeah,
those moments
yeah,
in time, and it's like, what's going on?
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's weird, but yeah,
It's special, I think.
it really is. It really is. Yeah.
So you started 2020 going into film school, but you actually decided to pull out and go into your masters. What what your masters in architecture? So
Mhm.
what was the thinking behind that?
Um, I don't know. Like it all seemed like everything fell into place. It's just one of those things. As soon as I enrolled into film school, I did think I don't know 2 weeks maybe, and then COVID hit. It all went online, and you can't do film school online. Like
Yeah.
if you can't do all the practical stuff, you might as well not do it. So I decided, you know, I was just gonna drop out because they really tried to convince me to stay because a lot of people are dropping out. But I was convinced that it I don't know if I exactly believe it was a sign or whatever, but I did feel like, this was an indication that I probably shouldn't be doing this right now. Because when I enrolled, it was a huge step for me. Going from a bachelor's of architecture to a master's in film was like such a big jump, and I really wasn't sure about it. But then when COVID hit and I, you know, basically had a reason to quit, I was like, I think I should just quit. Um, when it came to the Masters of Architecture, again, things just fell into place. You know, I I don't remember why I decided to apply for architecture again. I think it's because I started that virtual office crawl and I was talking to architects and they were telling me that I didn't need to be an architect even if I studied architecture. And I was like, okay, that does make sense. What they're telling me makes sense. And since I do want to make films about architecture, it makes sense for me to
Mhm.
keep learning about architecture. The practical skills of filmmaking can be learned, on my own, as long as I just keep working on it. And yeah, I don't know. I applied for a bunch of architecture schools around Australia. Ended up having a choice somehow. Like I got to choose which one I wanted to go to, and yeah, everything just fell into place perfectly. I couldn't believe it. But yeah.
Do you think you'll revisit the filmmaking school after you've finished your masters,
Mm,
or is it just going to be
I
something where you're
hope
just going to teach yourself?
Yeah, I hope I don't need to because I think at that point I didn't know a lot about filmmaking and getting a taste of film school was nice. Like I did enjoy it, but it really felt like if I just because basically what they do is they just make you make films. It's kind of like a studio where you learn as you do it. So I felt like I didn't really need that. And obviously I would have learned a lot more through film school, but I feel like what I definitely need to learn, I can learn by myself, if that makes sense.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
I think alongside, there's also I think with film as well, it is something you can teach yourself, and it's not something you need to have a degree for. Essentially, though it might help you and it can get you in the right directions. But I think if you could study something like architecture alongside building up your film knowledge and your expertise in film, then I think you're on the right track because you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting a degree in architecture, which could potentially be a career, but then you're also building up your filmmaking skills, which could then become part of the portfolio. And
Mm.
so is that something you want to continue doing with your YouTube? Do you want to showcase your architecture kind of lifestyle, or what's the kind of things you want to show through your filmmaking and your architecture?
Um, That's an interesting question. I haven't really thought about that. In terms of what I want to make films about for the time being, I just want to kind of document what I'm doing at the moment
Mhm.
in the most silly way possible. I just think of this craziest idea I can and kind of tell a story through that. But I haven't thought about, incorporating film into my architecture. The only thing I've really thought about was for future projects to make, instead of a final pinup, I don't know if they'd allow me to, just make a film on the project. I don't know if I'd be allowed to do that, but seeing as what has happened through COVID, like seeing people do online presentations seems like there is an opportunity to do that. Because what's the difference between an online presentation and something that's been pre-recorded? I don't know.
Did you see my final presentation?
Was that the? I think yeah, I think I did. Is that the one where you won the award?
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw that one. Yeah.
So when this is going to sound weird, but when we went into lockdown and when we went into the whole COVID thing and knowing that we had to be at home, I was as soon as we that happened, I suddenly thought to myself, well, everything's going to be now digital. We're going to be presenting digitally, so surely there'll be an opportunity to put together a video of some kind to talk about my project. And as we went along, they were like, so for your final presentation, you need a 10-minute video talking through your work. You need your portfolio, photos and models, etc. So at that point, I was thinking, no way, like this is literally exactly what I've been working towards. Essentially, 3 years at architecture, studying architecture, and then introducing my filmmaking skills. And so I put together that presentation, and like you say, there's with putting together a film and talking through your project through film and showcasing your project as film, there's also an opportunity to showcase other skills that you have, which you wouldn't be able to show by pinning up a piece of paper on the wall.
Mhm.
Like for me, when it was very simple, my presentation. I was just talking through the portfolio, but I put this kind of vintage overlay kind of flicker thing through
Mhm.
the work, which because my project essentially was a film, then when I put together a presentation that was actually a film and that I was using these film techniques, it completely brought my project together and it completed the story of my project. So in a lot of ways, when you put together a film, it could actually help you tell the story of your project and introducing things like that. So I think you should try and push to use film because
Mhm.
I think you want the idea of architecture is that yes, it's architecture and you're just in this discipline where you're designing houses. You're designing these residential units. People also forget how broad architecture is and how there's so many disciplines that are connected to architecture. And I guess that's what our kind of Instagram pages and digital platforms do. They explore those potentials. And the MadCon is and the MadCollective introduces all these graphic design illustrators, all these engineers or whatever, and brings it all together. So I think it'd be interesting for you to continue to push that and to test the boundaries because I think it's very easy to get inside that box of just, I'm studying architecture, I'm learning this, I'm learning
Yeah,
details.
for sure.
But it's
Mhm.
just, if you're a creative like yourself and like me, you want to be able to push the boundaries and expand it
Mhm.
and push it further and be creative because there is those opportunities. And I know I just
Yeah.
went off on a tangent there, but
No, I agree 100%. It's and hearing you say that has also made something click in my head that it makes so much sense for me to do that because since I'm saying I want to make films about architecture in the future, my project, even though my projects they won't be built or whatever, they're still architecture projects, and it's still in a lot of ways practice for me to tell a story of a project, just not something that's been built yet. So yeah, I agree 100%.
so I
I
think
think I'll do that.
I think you should do a film, your
Mm,
project as a film. And I think that would be
mm,
like unreal. I think you'd know that. And it's also something I always talk about is when you're studying architecture is introduce things that you enjoy and that you are passionate about
mm,
within your projects. to make you more motivated, to inspire you more, to push it further, and to take your work to that next level. So you're essentially using your hobbies and pushing it into other disciplines to help you move forward.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the beauties of architecture. It's one of those things where you can do that. You get the opportunity to incorporate all these different things because architecture is so complex. Like there's always a way to get something in there. So yeah.
Cool. Should we dive into a bit of a Q&A?
Sure, go.
I've got, so we put a Q&A poll up on my Instagram. If you're not following my Instagram, it's Tomo Studios, and Alvin's is Projects by People. We've got a couple of questions, not many. I just wanted to dive into 2 or 3 so we could just go on for a couple more tangents. The first one being, I think this is a big question, and I think we're probably asking the same questions. How can I be an architect and a photographer or a filmmaker at the same time? I think we're trying to find those answers as well, but
yeah, the balance. I guess it's a balance, I guess I can add something that is paraphrasing something that someone once told me. They they started in architecture, went through architecture school, and then eventually they left that behind to pursue becoming like a full-time artist. And I was asking that same question. I was like, how did you, if you want to be an architect, because she continues to tutor. I don't know if I should give away who she is. If you continue to tutor architecture and stay in the architecture world, why did you leave it? Why did you leave practice to become a full-time artist? And what she said was, it's not that she doesn't love architecture, it's just that she loves being an artist more. So for her, the decision was based on what she loved more. And it doesn't mean you don't like the other thing and you have to give it up completely. You can still, in a lot of ways, be connected to it. It's just a matter of finding, what you want to do more and then really going in 100% on that, I think is, yeah.
I think it's also a matter of testing as well and experimenting, because essentially if you want to be a filmmaker and a photographer as well as an architect, you could end up veering more towards photography and videography and not end up liking it, and then you're like, well, I've missed out on this in architecture, or the vice versa. So I think you have to obviously commit to, if you've been an architect, you have to commit to architecture, but you could also dip your toe into other things. And like we've said throughout this podcast, you can go off on tangents and bring things in. And that way you can test if you want to do those things and test if you want to go in those directions, rather than ditching it, going into photography and then think, actually, I don't want to do that. You just got to try and got to use the 4-burner theory to balance things out. And yeah, I think we're trying to find the answer to those questions as well.
Yeah.
I think in our experience, I think just balance is a broad word, and people are like, well, what is balance? How do you balance? I think it's just about having set amount of time to do your studying and working, but also putting an hour or 2 aside every day or every week to do the things you enjoy, like photography and filmmaking, and making sure that you have that time to enjoy those things as well.
Yeah, I think that's like the perfect way to put it. Like, yeah, it's basically committing to it in a different way. Like, yeah, committing some time to it, but not. Yeah, I agree.
Next question. Bit of a common question, but what basically she's saying, what inspires you? I guess that's a massive question, but let's say what inspires you within architecture, and then what inspires you within filmmaking?
Within architecture, I guess what inspires me is just seeing the way it can impact people. I think that's just incredible. It's completely different to anything else. It can really change people's lives on a daily basis or whatever, so drastically that I think it's just so important. In terms of filmmaking, what inspires me, just a good story. Like when I can get so caught up into a story that, you know, when someone disagrees with me, I get really upset or outraged about their opinion. That's when I'm like, wow, this story, this film just really affected me somehow. Yeah, I think that's just cool and
Are there
inspiring.
any YouTubers that you get inspired by? Who are your kind of main YouTubers that you watch then for your filmmaking?
Um, there are so many. Like I grew up on YouTube, and I guess it's changed so much over the years. Um, more, I guess, since I started filmmaking, you know, Casey Neistat, everyone
Yeah.
knows, everyone talks about him, and he's just,
It's just the top
yeah, he's
tier.
like the stand. Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. You know, and then there's also Peter McKinnon, like his
Yeah.
friends, all that, Dan Mace.
Have you seen
But
Daniel Schiffer
yes, yeah,
is
yeah.
so I the main YouTubers that I watch are Daniel Schiffer and Pete McKinnon.
Mm.
It's
Yeah, man.
unreal. It's unbelievable.
These people are just, I don't know how they produce so much quality. And I mean, I guess they're filmmakers, but just seeing what they can do really does inspire me as well. Like seeing what people are able to do is just, it just blows my mind sometimes. I'm like, how does someone do that? I want to be able to do that. And it really helps push me to, yeah, work harder.
Cool. I think we'll wrap it up there. Is there anything you want to finish up on? Anything you want to plug or you want to say before heading off?
Um, I don't know if I should plug my own YouTube, but
No,
you know,
go for
it'd
it.
be great.
Do it.
It'd be
Do
great
it.
to hear
Do it.
what people think about my videos. I did start a YouTube channel a few months ago. I've
Mhm.
really been enjoying it, and other than that, you know, projects by people is something that, you know, submissions are open to anyone. I post pretty much everything that I receive, as long as it's in the right format. And people don't send in the right format, and then don't reply to me
Yeah.
when I tell them to send it, I'm not gonna, like, yeah. Other than that, yeah, I think that's about it. Watch, come along to MadCon. I think it's going to be incredible. And that's it from me.
So what's the YouTube channel called so they know where
Oh,
to
okay.
look?
So it's just Alvin Zu,
Mhm.
Alvin ZHU. Yeah.
And so Alvin usually puts together probably, let's say 3 to 5 minute videos where
Mhm.
it's kind of short, animated, kind of sketches, kind of stories, which I think are really interesting. And you should definitely check him out for sure. Cool.
Cheers for that.
Well, thanks a
Yeah.
lot, Alvin. Thanks a lot for coming on. I'm very excited for the MadCon. If anyone wants to listen in or watch the MadCon, definitely get involved. I'll put the more kind of details down in the description. And if you've got any more information or you want to know any more information, just obviously drop me or Alvin a message on Instagram or just wherever you can find us. And yeah, thank you very much, Alvin. Thank you, ladies and gents, for listening to the number one student podcast in the world. If it is the number one student podcast. If you enjoyed it, please drop it a thumbs up if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, head over to Instagram and give us a little follow. And yeah, thank you so much for listening, guys. And I'll see you next time. Peace.